how many four-letter words can I use on that?
Transfers to a double. Cheddar is driving. Nothing yet. Takedown. Michael Cheddar.
Oh, Nick, I'm a top guy, so I love top wrestling.
Hale trying to sink him. He does. Maximus Hale the fall.
So I think that wrestling is the greatest sport on earth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into On3 Wrestling. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. With me today is EIWA legend himself and InterMat's Austin Sommer. Austin, good to talk to you, man. I haven't talked to you either face-to-face or on the air in quite some time, but, I always watch your guys' program. You guys do a great job, and we're going to talk a little Ivy League tonight. How's it going, man?
Feeling good, man. Thanks for having me on, and it's always good to talk Ivies. I feel like since they separated from the EIWA, they don't get as much love just being in their own little conference. 6 teams, but as we're going to talk, six quality teams, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. I wanted your first impressions first because, you look at the EIWA, how big and historic of a wrestling conference that is. Ivy League teams were always a part of it. They make this move to separate, and, there are many factors to this. They actually got more bids, as people have realized at this point, more auto bids for NCAAs than the EIWA conference did in totality. So I think, one, it speaks to the quality of these Ivy League teams this year and obviously in years past. But what was your first reaction to seeing that the Ivy League was going to branch off, do their own thing? And again, who knows if the other Ivies that don't have wrestling eventually add the sport, but at the minimum right now, it's a small tournament. It's one day. It's like the ACC tournament or the Pac-12 tournament at this point. What was your initial reaction to when you heard this news that, all right, this is going to be its own thing now?
Yeah, I mean, the writing was on the wall. I think a few years ago there was always chatter about it, but nothing really officially came through. And then it came through, and I wasn't shocked at it. I understand the reasoning behind it, and it didn't catch me off guard. It caught some people off guard, but I see why they did it. There were 6 teams of the 17 in the EIWA, and they carried half of the allocations every year, half of the qualifiers, so it was good to see them branch out and kind of earn the respect and earn the allocations that they may have rightfully deserved, and go through a conference tournament that's not such a meat grinder. EIWA was 17 teams last year. Ivy League going down to 6 teams this year now. So, one-day tournament, like you said, a lot less matches. They're able to stay fresher for longer coming into NCAAs.
So we will not waste any time here. We'll just kind of dive right into it. Again, this is going to be at Princeton on Sunday. Action's on ESPN Plus all day. This is one of these all-day tournaments. Actually, before we actually go between these weight classes, is there a stark difference? And I know this is not much as of a meat grinder here, but it is still a long day. Some guys, if they have a bye, they have to win one, they're automatically in. They'll be in the finals. But at the most, you're wrestling, 3, maybe 4 matches, depending upon where you fall in the bracket. It might only just be 3 at this point. When you look at a tournament like this, especially from the college perspective, where NCAAs is 3 days, EIWAs are huge. The Big 10 and Big 12 tournament, those are 2 days as well. So what do you make of the difference now with these teams? They're going, okay, giant tournament with EIWAs. Now this one maybe a little bit more manageable on the body, as you alluded to.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it too. It probably depends on the competitor, depends on the team, the philosophy, and the health of the wrestler too. Sometimes it's good to get a 2-day grinder in 2 weeks before NCAAs, just to get your body used to getting up again and wrestling the next day. You're going to have to do that 2 times, right? Get up 2 more times and for the 3-day tournament NCAAs. So it could be good. It could be guys getting in the swing of things, getting their body used to that. On the flip side, a lot of people are banged up. Sometimes some guys don't need that, especially if you're a top 5 guy in the country. You may not need that 2-day grind of a tournament. You may just need 1 match. 1 day, 2 matches, get off the mat, qualify, and get home and rest up and get healthy again.
So let's get right into the brackets now. 125, very deep weight nationwide. I've talked to, I'm sure you've done the same thing. You talk to everybody. You're just like, who's going to win 125? Well, I really have no idea. It could be any
coin. Yeah.
and I think the Ivy League tournament's almost the same as, looking at the Big Ten bracket, for instance. There are a lot of high quality guys here, and the number 1 seed is Mark Anthony McGowan, Princeton's own. And this is a guy who wasn't in the lineup at the start of the year. He was a little bit banged up, but he was a very highly touted young buck for this Princeton Tigers lineup. He's the number 1 seed. You get a veteran like Max Gallagher over from Penn. He's the 2 seed. So those two guys have buys. And then don't forget about a guy like Diego Sotelo, the 3 seed at Harvard. It just seems like, I'm sure we'll get into it as we get through the brackets here, but 125 right off the bat, just looking at those top 3 guys, you're like, this is going to be a fun bracket.
Yeah, 3 allocations for, pretty much earned by those 3 guys you mentioned, in McGowan, Gallagher, and Sotelo. And, the 4th guy to look at is Marcelo Milani in there from Cornell. Sotelo last wrestled on January 25th, so over a month ago, like you mentioned, a little banged up, and he squeaked out a 3-point win against Milani. So Sotelo's still hurt, maybe a little rusty, not beat on the mat. That 3rd, 4th place match to go to nationals, Milani might be feeling good about himself there. And Sotelo and Gallagher, they wrestled 4 times already in their career. So they're most likely going to meet in the semis and have a rubber match, 5th and final, maybe final one. So yeah, it'll be an exciting match. And it just goes to show for how small this conference tournament is, how important results during the year are. Because you could probably put McGowan, Gallagher, and Sotelo, any of those guys being the 1 seed would make sense, right? But McGowan has a win over Gallagher. He didn't wrestle Sotelo, so McGowan gets that 1 seed, gets a little bit of an easier draw that way. And, Gallagher and Sotelo, they're going to fight out in the semis, and it's going to be a barn burner there.
When you look at 125 in totality, do you think this bracket is McGowan's to lose, or is a guy like Max Gallagher, despite the 2 seed and the head-to-head losses you alluded to, is this more of like, okay, the postseason's now where he's going to turn up, considering the way Penn has been able to wrestle, especially in the postseason the last couple of years?
Yeah, honestly, I think McGowan is probably just the slight favorite, just having that in-season win over Gallagher. And, like we mentioned, it's at Princeton. Going to be a little bit of home field advantage for him as well, being in the final bout there. So I think it's McGowan's, but by the slightest of margins, because Gallagher is, he was top 5 in the world last year in freestyle in U20s. So again, really good wrestler. Gallagher's been around the block. This is McGowan's first postseason. If that takes effect to him, probably not. Being a good wrestler, but sometimes nerves get to these young guys. They haven't been to that postseason grind yet. So, like I said, McGowan, I think slight favorite there, but if any of those 3 guys win it, wouldn't be really shocked.
Over at 133, Tyler Ferreira got the number 1 seed. He's their 33-pounder from Cornell. And then, of course, Ryan Miller at Penn, who's really turned it up a notch once again. Again, a guy that's just been around a long time. And, again, just goes to speak to that quality of that Penn Quakers program. So they're the top 2 seeds. How do you see this bracket shaking out? Is there somebody we should be watching out for from that quarterfinal round, or is it maybe a 1-2 type of bracket?
Personally, I think it's Ferrara and Miller, top 2. Hunter Adrian from Brown, obviously not a bad wrestler. Danny Brown, the 4 seed, not bad either. Just it'll be a tall task to knock off Ferrara and Miller there. Ferrara did beat Miller. I think it was 2-1 in the duel this year, so he earned the top seed. But, just going through this, just Miller being a senior, Ferrara being, I think, he's a freshman or sophomore. Again, not really having that postseason experience. And just Miller coming back and wanting that title. I think Miller might, by the slightest of margins, just be a slight favorite there.
Yeah.
He's higher in the rankings, but Ferrara does have the in-season win, so that's got to count for something, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. And 133 is only going to get 2 bids. And as we mentioned before, how the Ivy League has, essentially stole a lot of bids from the EIWA. EIWA, for reference and context, only has 1 in 133. So go figure that. But yeah, as you mentioned, Ferrara, Miller, probably your likely final at 133, but should be a good one. Again, big shoes to fill for Ferrara, considering Vito, who was there the past couple of years at 133. 141, very interesting weight class for the Ivy League, considering this is probably one of the more deep weight classes in this conference. I believe it's 4 bids for the Ivy League at 141. So, you win 1 match, you're essentially in. Obviously, if you're if you're in the finals, you're going to be in. And then obviously if you get to that 3rd, 4th place match, as long as you're in it, you're going to NCAA. So, again, a deeper weight, and it is only one of 2 weights, actually, in the Ivy League with 4 bids. Just looking at the bracket going down, CJ Composto, the number 1 seed, Midlands champ, very, very good this season. Joshua Sanders has turned up a little bit for Cornell. They're your top 2 seeds. But I think one guy, at least in my mind, that I've seen wrestle and that is kind of turning it up. And we, maybe had a little bit of hype last year, and it's now coming together. Is Eli Rivera for Princeton as well? He's the 3 seed. But he'll have a first-round match against Dante Frinzi of Harvard. How do you see 141 shaking out?
Yeah, I think this is probably the deepest bracket. And look, that 4-5 matchup right in the quarters there. That's going to be a big one. Because Oswald from Brown is the 5 seed, but earned an allocation. The 4 seed from Columbia, Lorenzo Frezza, honestly didn't know who he was coming in. He was 3-0 in the year, and he has a win over Oswald already, who earned an allocation. He has a win over Bucknell's Dylan Chappell, who's 20th in the country, earned an allocation for the EIWA. So Frezza has 2 quality wins of his 3 matches this year. So that bout number 5 is going to be one of the marquee matchups in this first round, because that win's going to go a long way in deciding who gets to go to NCAAs. Since you said this does bring 4, that's going to be a match to circle early on here in the quarters.
When you look at the top 2 guys in Composto and Sanders, to me, Composto's the favorite here, as he should be. A guy that maybe is a dark horse. I mean, not a dark horse for the podium, but I mean, when you're talking about NCAAs, I believe he's around 11 or 12 still in the country, maybe towards the top, closer to the top 10. He's been pretty much in that spot all season long. So you're talking about a guy who is an All-American contender.
Yeah.
To me, 41 has to be his bracket to lose on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. He's beaten Saunders from Cornell during the duel. It was close though. He had to kind of grind that one out in a hostile Cornell environment, a little neutral environment. Probably still lean Composto. Just being All-American. What was that? 3 years ago now in 2025. He's going to look to repeat that in front of his home crowd in Philly. So yeah, I think he is the favorite there, but you can't look past Eli Rivera from Princeton. Assuming he wins that first matchup. Him and Saunders from Cornell is going to be a good one. Rivera was 149 last year, placed in the EIWA, down to 141, which I think is his more natural weight class here. That's going to be a good semifinal to circle. Saunders and Eli Rivera, winner of that one's going to get Composto, and that's going to be a good match in the finals too. So this is a really deep bracket. I think there's 5 guys pretty much fighting for 4 spots, and I hate to say 5. I'll even say 6, because Dante Frinzi from Harvard, long, lanky wrestler, can catch guys in cradles and just in funky positions, just being so long for the weight class. So, yeah, I'm going to say it's 6 guys essentially fighting for 4 spots. It's going to be very competitive.
Yeah, it's almost going to be a shame to see the 2 guys who don't get those auto bids from this bracket, considering how deep it is. 149. I wanted to circle this one just because you look at the top 2 seeds. You got Cross Wasilewski from Penn, Ethan Fernandez from Cornell. Typical. It's like if you told me preseason, those 2 guys are your top 2 seeds. Okay, I could believe that. Yeah. But then I almost forgot about Ty Whalen. Ty Whalen was off to one of the hottest starts. I know there were some injuries along the way. I believe he hasn't wrestled as much as of late compared to earlier in the season. But Whalen coming in, I remember going to Princeton's wrestling room in the preseason. I'm like, yeah, that kid, like that. There's your All-American in this Princeton room, along with Luke Stout. Whalen, to me, is you could almost make an argument that he could be the favorite despite being the number 3 seed, and there are 3 allocations for this. So you look at those top 3 guys, likely your top 3 guys going to Philly, but it seems like Whalen to me is going to be could be a quote unquote bracket buster here at 149.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, and it's a mute point because 2 and 3, Fernandez and Whalen didn't wrestle this year, so I'm not sure how he determined 2 versus 3. They're going to meet in the semis regardless, but Wasilewski and Whalen, they wrestled in the duel, and it was an overtime win for Wasilewski, and it seemed like Whalen was close to getting takedowns. He was so close, couldn't quite get it. Finally, Wasilewski kind of snuck one in overtime and won that match, and if they meet again, that's going to be worth the price of admission. That's a good match. Like you said, circle that whole bracket there. That's going to be a good one to watch.
149, as I just mentioned, has 3 allocations for NCAAs. Before we get to 157, if you had to make a pick right now, I almost want to pick Whalen just because they're in the home gym. They're right in Jadwin. Tiger fans are going to be roaring, no pun intended, obviously. But I would love to see if he wins and he beats Ethan Fernandez in the semifinals, you see Ty Whalen on a finals mat at 149, I got to think there's going to be a lot of juice in that building where this bracket might end up being his to lose.
I mean, I can't disagree with you there. Like I said, those two wrestled to overtime. It was so evenly matched, and that's probably a coin flip match to me, a true definition of a toss-up there. Wrestle 5 times, or 10 times, each guy's going to win 5 times, right? But I just think having it at Princeton, having that home energy from the crowd, Whalen, might be 51% favorite versus Wazoo 49. It's essentially even there. It's going to be a good match.
157 also has 3 allocations for the Ivy League. Meyer Shapiro, the number 1 seed from Cornell, to be expected. Jude Swisher, who's been excellent this season for Penn, he's the number 2 seed. So they got the buys right there. And then you pretty much have 4 guys fighting for the other for the final spot to get to Philadelphia automatically. A guy like Blake Sato from Brown, really good. I talking to the Brown brass earlier this week. That's a guy who has really stepped up this year, and I think has jumped levels from last year to this year. So probably the third guy. If you're just going chalk with the seedings, that will get into Philadelphia automatically. But to me, this is Meyer Shapiro. Then pretty much everybody else trying to catch up to him at 157.
I agree with you there. Shapiro is just kind of in a tier by himself, kind of beating the crap out of everybody in this bracket already. Technically has a loss to Harrington, but it was injury default in the beginning of the year. But Harrington was kind of winning that match. It was pretty close there, but just Shapiro's a different wrestler than he was in the first or second week in November when that happened. Sato was the EIWA place finisher last year. Actually missed qualifying by NCAAs by 1 spot, so he was kind of right in that mix there as well. And you got guys like even the 6 seed Fedlin from Columbia, wrestled 149 most of the year, bumped up to 57, still a pretty dang good wrestler, so that's not an automatic win for Sato. That's another quarterfinal match I'm kind of looking forward to watching, because that could go either way. I think Sato's the favorite, but I'm interested to see what Fedlin can do. And we mentioned Harrington from Harvard, been kind of in and out of the rankings a little bit, maybe slipped out of them at the end of the year there, didn't quite earn an allocation, but a guy that if he does walk away with 4th place, I think he has an argument for an at-large bid as well. But him and Mann for Princeton, Mann started the year at 141. How crazy is that? Now he's up at 157, and
got to eat a little bit more for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a lack of a weight cut is nice for him. And he has a win over Luke Nichter from Drexel, who was 30th in the coaches rankings, so he's proven he can beat some of these guys. And again, another weight class where there's 6 guys battling it out for this, in this case, 3 allocations, but there's going to be some good wrestling down the line here.
Just in the bigger picture here, not to jump too far ahead to NCAAs in 2 weeks, but Shapiro, everyone knows how good he is. I know he was dinged up. I believe it was the concussion earlier on in the year. So he's only 9-1, but we know how good he is. He's currently ranked 2nd in the country. He's just a shade behind Tyler Kasak of Penn State. When you look at Shapiro and the way he's been wrestling as of late, obviously you're a little bit closer to the Ivy League action than I am right now. But when you look at the way he has jumped from, dinged up in November and December, and now January, February, going into March, he's starting to peak again. It seems like this kid is back to that level of, that's the kid we thought could definitely challenge, if not win the whole thing in March in Philadelphia, come 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I mean, last year Cornell they were a trophy team, and a lot of it was because of Shapiro just being a madman on the backside, like you said, lost in the quarters, and boom, came back major tech fall, pin guys, whatever he needed to do, and really almost single-handedly helped Cornell get on the podium there for a trophy. And if he's wrestling that again, I don't see how he can really lose. Obviously Tyler Kasak, Teamer, pretty much anyone from the Big Ten, those top guys there are going to challenge him, but he's just so unorthodox. He has so many different ways to score. His defense is good. As long as he's not in his own head, I think he's probably the best guy in the country right now.
Yeah, you go back to his season last year. I'm just looking at the results. He lost to Trevor Chumley of Northwestern 2-1. He lost to and then his other 2 losses were to Stanford's Daniel Cardenas, who we know how good he is, obviously. Yeah. But those were 2 losses. One was in the regular season. The other was a 1-point loss at NCAAs. This is a kid who majored a guy like Bryce Andonian, and if people watch Virginia Tech or know Bryce Andonian, that kid will major pretty much anybody in the country if he gets his hands on you. So the fact that Shapiro had a great freshman year just like that at 29-3 to finish 3rd place, you might be right. This could be and actually be the best guy in the country, despite the fact of the attention that Kasak's continuation of development from last year now at a different weight. He's number one in the country. We've seen Teamer when healthy, how good he is as well, but Shapiro might take the cake when it comes to NCAAs in 2 weeks. So definitely his bracket to lose. At 165 for the Ivies, only 2 bids for 165. Julian Ramirez for Cornell is the number 1 seed. Cesar Alvin from Columbia, the number 2 seed. Arguably Columbia's best wrestler this season, depending upon how you rate them. But those 2 guys, should they meet in the finals, of course, they will be the guys representing the Ivy League in Philadelphia with the auto bids. But this weight does go kind of deep if you go through, the rest of the seeds. The other 4 guys all have quality wins, quality resumes. You look at Blaine Berge of Princeton. He's the 3 seed. Even Andy Trozinski, who's the 5th seed for Penn. He's been pretty good this year as well. Then, of course, Keegan Rothrack of Brown's number 4, and rounding it out is Cale Berg of Harvard at number 6. But another one of those weights where a lot of madness could happen despite, despite being a small bracket. A lot of madness could happen despite the fact you have 2 guys at the top that are likely the overwhelming favorite to get to the finals. But these other guys can make some noise, especially when you alluded to before at large bids are at stake. You finished 3rd in this bracket, and the NCAA committee is going to be looking at, hey, you finished 3rd at 165. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think Ramirez is kind of in a league of his own at this weight class, at least, just being a top 5, top 6 guy all year. I'm a big Julian Ramirez fan. He's been around at 12 for 3 straight years, haven't gotten over that hump yet. I'm hoping that he does. It'd be great for him, great for the program, and just get that monkey off your back and finally achieve your goal is, it's something I've never felt, but I can't imagine what's going through that guy's head, especially if he gets to that match again. Like, oh, here we are again. I've lost 3 times. It's just the whole psychological there of an athlete is different too. And I think Alvin is the second best guy. Obviously, he's the second best guy, but if he would lose to Cale Berg from Harvard or Blaine Berge from Princeton, would I be totally shocked? No. Just those guys are still pretty tough, and I kind of feel bad for Trzynski and Rothrock being on that top side with only 2 allocations. Really tall order to beat Ramirez, barring an injury or some crazy fluke there. But Berge and Berg, they're going to have to wrestle a good sort of match, knock off Alvin. But I don't see that happen. I think Alvin is solid enough to win that match. And he was an NCAA qualifier, I think 2 years ago now, down at 157 when he placed at EIWA. So he's looking to get back there again.
Yeah, so 165 again, as we both agree, running through Julian Ramirez of Cornell. 174, another interesting bracket. Only 2 allocations. Simon Ruiz is the number 1 seed of Jersey fame. And, just going back to the high school stuff with, seeing him in high school, before he went to Cornell, and just talking to other guys who covered the sport year round before, I pop in for the postseason, of course. Yeah. But when they talk about Simon Ruiz, they're like, yeah, that kid, like that's a special talent. And he's proven it right now. He's ranked. He's the number 1 seed here at the Ivy League tournament. Jack McGill from Columbia is the number 2. Surprisingly, though, Nick Kosko, number 3. That's a guy who's, maybe a round of 16 blood round type guy, a minimum in Philadelphia this year. He's the 3 seed. He's got to do some work to even get to the finals to get that second that second auto bid. So very tough weight with those top 3. And I think Austin, unfortunately, let's just say we have chalk. One of those 3 in the semifinals is going to be going home unhappy and just praying for an at-large bid.
This is a weird weight class because the 1 seed and the 3 seed earned allocations. McGill didn't earn one, but he beat Incontrera to earn the 2 seed. Lost to Ruiz close, I think, by 2 or 3 points, right? So he's kind of in that mix, but just doesn't have all the quality wins besides Incontrera. And as you mentioned, Incontrera was, I think, 7th in the country for the longest time. Went through a 2 or 3 week span where he lost to McGill by major, which is very rare for him, and then lost to Ruiz. And just to go back on Ruiz, just to show you his improvement, he lost to Incontrera the 2nd week in November, came back and beat him in the duel. So just the steps he's making and the progress he's making just goes to show that Ruiz is probably the favorite here. But that semifinal match between Incontrera and McGill, that's going to be a good one to watch because there's going to be a lot on the line for that one.
Yeah, winner gets the finals and gets the auto bid. So Ruiz probably his to lose, but again, we just mentioned how close these guys just wrestled, and Ruiz this year has been excellent. And Contreras 19-5 this season, round of 16 guy last year. Ruiz is a freshman this year. already 20 wins. And, you know, you're talking about, I think he had about a 10-match winning streak at one point through a bunch of duels when you go through January through February. So he's coming in pretty hot. Should be a very exciting weight. 184, Austin. We're going back 4 bids. This is a big-time weight class where a lot of guys could get in, and the quality here really good because you have Chris Foca at number 1 for Cornell, Maximus Hale from Penn. He's number 2 in this weight class, guys that, you know, you would think are going to get the NCAAs regardless. Then the battle for the last 2 spots, Cole Mulhauser for Princeton, Nick Fine for Columbia. Then you go Andrew Reel for Brown and Luke Rada for Harvard. Deep weight here for this Ivy League conference. I got to imagine this is probably a Foca Hale final based on how good they are. Foca, to me, is the pretty big favorite here. But again, you look at a 4-bid bracket here. You know, there could be a little bit mad. You know, we are in March, a little bit of March Madness right here.
Oh yeah, I mean, Foca being the top guy, one of the top guys in the country that he is. I think he's top 5, top 6 right now. Got to be the favorite, at least on paper. It's going to take a major upset to knock that guy off. But from what I was looking at, 2 through 5 seeds, all kind of, well, I should say 2 through 4, all kind of beat each other. You know, so the transitive property, this guy beat that guy beat this guy, and this guy beat that first guy. You know, so they're all kind of beating each other, and they're all close matches. You know, they're all 1-point matches, overtime matches. Then you throw in the 5th seed, Reel from Brown. He has an overtime loss to Hale, the 2 seed. You know, so it's kind of, I think 2 through 5 are kind of all pretty even in that bracket there, and only taking 4 guys, and Foca most likely going to be number 1. You got 4 guys fighting for those last 3 spots there. It's gonna be some good wrestling, and I'm looking at 4 and 5 in that first round. That could be another good, really important quarterfinal. Winning that first one puts you in a lot better spot to earn that top 4 spot.
What's fascinating to me is you just mentioned Reel's close match with Hale as an overtime loss. I'm just thinking out loud here. You know, say Reel loses in the quarterfinals, where he drops in the bracket, he'd be, you know, now the top side of the consolations. And let's just say for kicks here that Maximus Hale loses to a guy like Cole Mulhauser in the semifinals. Then you get a Reel Hale rematch in the Conti semis. Winner gets the 3rd, 4th match and gets that bid to NCAA. So we're talking backside right here that could all of a sudden mean it's like the blood round at NCAA. So who's going to get that? You know, these guys get picked off all the time. So you could find these little landmines right here, even in a 6-man bracket.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to, that's a great point too, because that goes back to the 74 semifinal we were talking about, McGill versus Incontrera. That's actually a more important match for McGill in that case, and in 84, more important match for Reel, because if Reel does win, Hale earned an allocation, but he's 1 spot from that allocation. That'll go a lot further in the at-large process when they're looking at guys versus Reel. If he were to get 5th, he was 1 spot out. You know, he doesn't get that extra bump in points or whatever that algorithm uses there. So again, if you didn't earn the allocation, not to put pressure on the guy, but it's a bigger match for those guys that didn't earn the allocation. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of those matches here, and it'll be interesting to see how that's wrestled. And they're going to be tight. You know, all these matches are tight in the regular season. Postseason, they just become that much tighter, right?
Boy, there's just a lot of math to be doing. There's gonna be a lot of math going on Sunday, which I don't excel at it, so that's why I decided to broadcasting and writing.
We'll let these Ivy guys handle the math.
That's right. That's right. We are an Ivy League institution, so math should be no problem for those guys. 197 for the Ivy League. Only 2 bids for this weight. Luke Stout, alluded to him before, Princeton, number 1 seed. Mikey Delegata, I'm very excited to watch the young buck for Cornell. He's the number 2 seed. So it's essentially those 2 guys are trying to fend off everybody else for these auto bids. You throw Joe Curtis in there from Columbia. He got the 3 seed. Max Agressi from Harvard. He's number 4. Thomas Sandoval from Brown is 5. And Nathan Taylor from Penn rounds out at number 6. I know Penn's kind of gone back and forth with a couple guys due to some injuries at 197 this year. But to me, it's Stout and Delegata. Those are your 2 guys that you have to beat. You know, and then they're pretty much running this bracket. I got to think Stout, especially when he's healthy. I mean that dude's a tank. I've seen him up close. I've seen him in action in duels at NCAAs. When he's on, he is so tough to beat. But I'm fascinated by Mikey Delegata, the young buck from Cornell, really stepping up this year at 97.
Yeah, I want to see Stout weigh in because I don't believe he weighs 197.
There's no way.
He's a big dude, man. Yeah, Stout. His closest match in this bracket was actually Delegata, and he tech fouled him. So you got to
nuts.
Which is nuts, yeah. But again, I didn't see that match. It could have been fluky where he had a few bonus points. Delegata maybe was throwing some stuff at him that didn't land. So I expect that match to be closer when they wrestle again, obviously. But Delegata was kind of kicking everyone else's butt during the year too. So I feel like those two have really separated themselves on paper. Stout is the favorite, the heavy favorite, but like you said, Delegata is really talented. So I don't expect that to be a tech, probably not even a major at this point, but Stout's gonna have to bring it because Delegata, like you mentioned, really good wrestler. Cornell, they always turn it on for come March time. So yeah, I think it's definitely Stout, the favorite here, and just how close can Delegata keep that match, and maybe pull a major upset. It's not many times you see a guy get tech fold in the year, come back and win. Not saying it won't happen, but obviously a tall task.
Yeah, without a doubt. Mikey Delgado, of course, coming with a lot of accolades. Just saw him the other year, being a 4-time New Jersey State medalist, guy barely, he had under 20 losses in high school, a state champion in his own right a couple years ago at 2023. So, and, you mentioned how he got teched by Luke Stout earlier this year. You go back to, I believe it was, I'm looking at it right now, February 8th. So, but other than that, he's pretty much, as you said, he's been handling everybody. And I think one of his other losses might have even been a medical forfeit. So, has he really lost maybe only 2 true matches this year? So, and by the time you get to a postseason, there's always a different matchup. But again, Stout in the home gym should help him out as well. He's the favorite for a reason. That's how good he is. But if that's our final at 197, I'm looking forward to that one. Heavyweight Austin. Oh, boy, I'm sure the Ivy League is shaking their head at this one because this is the only weight class with one allocation or one auto bid for the weight. Ashton Davis from Cornell. Of course, it's Cornell. They're the heavyweight is the number 1 seed. John Pardo, interesting to see how he wrestles for Penn. He's number 2. Sebastian Garibaldi, number 3 for Princeton. Vincent Miller from Columbia is number 4. Alex Semenenko from Brown is 5, and then Logan Marisol from Harvard rounding it out. But it's unbelievable. The champion is the only guy that's going to be punching a ticket, and everybody else is going to be looking for an at-large bid. I got to think Davis is the favorite here. I'm interested to see if Garibaldi, because he's one of those heavyweights that I saw up close. I'm like, oh, that dude can actually move a little bit. He's not your old school heavyweight. He's got some flexibility. He's got some speed to him as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he made a bit of a run and you maybe see a Davis Garibaldi final here at heavyweight.
Yeah, 2 interesting things about this bracket. Technically, no one earned an allocation. They didn't meet that minimum threshold, but because you win the conference, you get that automatic allocation. So it's just interesting. We have all these weights we were talking. Some of them are 4 allocations, some are 3, and this one technically didn't earn any. But when you win the conference, you get the auto bid, obviously. And this is also the only weight where there's no wrestlers in the bracket that have been to the NCAA tournament in the past. Mm-hmm. So a lot of fresh blood here, if that's what you want to call it. Just don't have a ton of postseason experience, so it'll be interesting. Davis is, I think, 3-0 against the field here. Kind of in and out of the rankings. I think he was 30th, 31st in InterMat and Flow rankings a little bit. So didn't quite earn an allocation, but was the closest chance. But Pardo at number 2, man, I seeing him wrestle beginning of the year and then seeing him wrestle at the end, vast difference in how that guy's wrestled. So I think he's going to give Davis a good run if he does win. Yep. He does have a major over Garibaldi in their dual meet. But again, that was at Penn, that was in a dual meet setting, obviously a little different than what we're going to see here. So I think that'll be a good match as well. And that finals match, going to be a lot on the line there. It's you win, you go.
Just from a selfish perspective, I hope the heavyweight actually ends the night for the Ivy League finals, considering, hey, you're the winner. You're the only guy going pretty much. Yeah. So I hope I hope that's actually the case. But yeah, who knows? You never know. So also, before I let you go, and again, I appreciate your time tonight as we wrap up our Ivy League preview. I was curious about what you thought about some of these coaches. The Ivy League does have a lot of coaching change on the horizon, coaching changes that just happened. So it's kind of a new era, so to speak, especially with the tournament for the Ivy League. I wanted to start with Roger Reina first, and just your thoughts on his legendary career that he is now. He's stepping down. Matt Valenti is going to be stepping up. I believe it's April 1st or something along those lines where he'll be officially named the head coach for Penn. But a new era for Penn coming in. But what can you say about Roger Reina? I know, obviously, you know him quite well, just covering the Ivy League and the IWA for so long. What are your thoughts on him and how his career is pretty much wrapping up here?
Yeah, just getting to know Coach Reina a little bit. I see why he's successful. He's a really good person overall. Really cares about his wrestlers and likes to put people in the right positions for the right situations. And may not be the biggest X's and O's guy. Obviously, may not be the best technician, but really communicates with the alumni well. Really gets along with his guys, and you can see why they brought him back and why he kind of turned that program around in the few short years he was there. I think he's been there for like 6 or 7 years now in his second stint. You can see why. He's a good mind, great mind for wrestling, great mind for the sport, and just good person overall. And Lenny filling in, national champ for them, multiple-time All-American. Alumni love that hire. Everyone in the room loves that hire, and they brought on Darian Cruz to be the assistant coach. Guy got 5th place at the Olympics, NCAA champion, just bringing a wealth of knowledge and just youth, and just another good overall guy. A lot of good people in that Penn room, which does go a long way.
Without a doubt. And then speaking of some of the younger staffs, Columbia, first year under Donny Pritzlaff, coming from my end of things, being at Rutgers for 10 years, tremendous technician, tremendous coach, tremendous motivator, just a guy you want to be around for a program. But we saw what he did in the offseason once he took the job, probably a long-awaited head coaching job for Donny Pritzlaff. Yeah. Staff is loaded. You got Sebastian Rivera, who we just saw over the last couple of years on the international stage, world silver medalist, Olympic bronze medalist just last year. We saw what he did in college with Northwestern and Rutgers, 5-time All-American, just being a big-time crowd favorite, big energy type guy. Then you bring in other guys like Greg Bolzak, who's an All-American for Rutgers at the end of his career. And, of course, Jeff Buxton, who, for the Jersey people that know it, he's just a legendary coach. Yes. Blair, Team USA, all those things. What a staff. And what have you noticed with Columbia this year, first year under Donny and crew, and how that team or how the program has started to evolve and maybe catch up to the programs like a Cornell, a Penn, and the way Princeton's also rebuilding as well?
Yeah, it'll be interesting because Pritzlaff was hired pretty late in the process. It was like August, like maybe September, and guys were already in school, and they were kind of practicing and didn't really know who the coach was at the time because that process took forever.
Like the June, July area, something like that. Yeah.
It was kind of late in the process, so he didn't have much time to get his culture and stuff developed until later in the year, obviously. So, that's one of those things. Along with Coach Lean up at Brown, it's going to take time to get what you want in there, get the athletic department to trust you, and just kind of build that culture and get your mindset and get everything that you want in there, and then the recruits will start coming. It's easy to pitch Ivy League education, that's always a good factor. But with the NIL now, it's for a big program, like take Oklahoma State, for example, you throw a ton of money there. It's easy to get some big guys in there, right? Can't really do that with the Ivy League. So it's a bit of a slower build, and it's going to take some time. But if there's a guy to do it, it's definitely a guy like Pritzlaff. Buxton, I think, is underrated, just hasn't been on the college scene much. So bringing him in, I think, was great because he's a great technician. He's coached all around the world and has been to all these world events. So bringing that guy in, and you get a guy like Rivera, who's just young, loves that Jersey attitude, just great overall guy. And just like I said, the energy from him and the technique and skills that he brings, it's a great staff he has there. And I can't wait to see it flourish. And it's only going to make the Ivy Leagues better, right? You start competing with Cornell, Penn, and Princeton, it just raises the bar for everybody. And they're going to have 28 allocations this year. They'll have maybe 40 in the next few years when Brown and Columbia and Harvard start building up as well. So it's going to be really good, and I'm excited for the future of Ivies.
Without a doubt. I'll leave you here with this one. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the host school, of course, Princeton on Sunday. Their staff, Joe Dubuque's been there for a long time. He's only a couple of years into his head coaching tenure, but you mentioned how these staffs have been remade. It's almost like a youth movement now. The old era is going to the new era now where you're trying to catch the Cornells. Cornell's always been the dominant force. Penn has rebuilt themselves. They've been a force in the Ivy League over the last 5 to 7 years. Princeton had a great program towards the end under Chris Ayers after he took a long time to really get that thing going and building and producing obviously All-Americans and eventually a national champion in Pat Glory, and Dubuque's kind of continuing that with a bit of a rebuild of his own. But we've even seen it over the second half of the season. Princeton's really turned up a notch compared to the first semester, and I got to imagine especially with a lot of young guys on that roster, it's really helped that you have a guy like Anthony Ashnall on the staff, Cody Brewer, Nate Jackson. The NJRTC is what it is right now as well. Princeton, to me, is one of those staffs where, Coach Dubuque, I mean, he might not like me saying this, but it's going to be hard to keep those guys on your staff for quite a long time because they're going to get some head coaching. To me, they're going to get head coaching interest within the next, who knows, maybe 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. Ashnall, one of the best wrestlers to come out of the entire state of New Jersey, and a little bit of rivalry there between Rutgers and Princeton.
Yeah,
so he kind of jumped ship there, which I'm sure
fun. Yeah, I'll
sure
tell you what, it was pretty weird seeing him in black and orange. I'm like, hey, those colors don't look good on you. But obviously, he's doing a great job over there. But I mean, yeah, you're right. Continue.
Yeah, it just like you said, a lot of youth there, and they just know the sport. They know they're good people, and they know what the hell they're doing there, obviously. And if you can recruit to Ivy Leagues and a Big Ten coach calls you, it's going to be hard to turn a job like that down. A lot more resources, a lot more money are going around. Education in a lot of those Big Ten schools is almost on par with the Ivy Leagues, right? But obviously a little different. If those guys get scooped up and get called away for I'll say a better job, depending on how you're phrasing that. I wouldn't be surprised to see those guys leave. But Dubuque's got to keep them around and keep those guys happy and paid well so that they don't leave, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, either way, that program to me in about, let's say, the next 2 years, I think we're going to see probably back to where they were when they were producing many qualifiers, All-Americans, and you have a season where you get guys like Pat Glory and Quincy Monday. You get 2 NCAA finalists. You have another year like that. I think Princeton's certainly knocking on the door of something like that again in the near future, especially if they keep recruiting at the pace they've been recruiting with the staff they have in place. So, Austin, really appreciate your time. Looking forward to the Ivy League tournament on Sunday. Looking forward to seeing you out there as well. It should be a long but great day of wrestling, and we'll have to do this again sometime, of course, talking more Ivy League wrestling. Put a spotlight on the Ivies. They branched off for a reason. The brand's out there. This should be a really good tournament.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see you and see some good wrestling there, and maybe we'll see some studying going on as well in between sessions, and maybe we'll get involved with some of that studying. You could always break a mental sweat too.
Oh, absolutely. Got to do it. Do a little math too. So Austin Sommer of InterMat, of course, catch his coverage of EIWA and Ivy League stuff on InterMat.com. Of course, give him a follow on all social media channels as well. Thanks, Austin. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. Happy to see you on Sunday. Let's do it.